And greetings. Happy Thursday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand on BlazeTV radio podcast. Steve Deace here alongside Aaron McIntyre, Todd Erzin, and all of you at 888-900-3393. That's 888-900-3393. Steve at stevedeace.com is the email address. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. And don't forget, you can now go to YouTube to get free clips of this show. If you like free, that's youtube.com/Steve Deace. Subscribe to our new YouTube page. You'll get samples of this show that you can sample and then share with others if you would be so kind, because that would help us to get the word out as well. That's how you can help us help you. Again, youtube.com/Steve Deace. And now on Parler. What's Parler? Well, you'll soon find out, because we're all going to be there here sooner than later once we get banned from Twitter. Parler is the competition to Twitter, where free speech is still permitted. At Steve Deace on Parler, DEACE, at Steve Deace on Parler. All right, coming up here today, one of the leading researchers when it comes to demographics and belief systems in America, George Barna, will be joining us here at the bottom of the hour. Next hour, for Theology Thursday, we're going heavy on application. I did this last week in an overtime, and I know that in general the rule is what is said in the overtime has to remain in the overtime, right?
Yes.
But I got to thinking about it. The reason why I put this topic in the overtime is because I was concerned if I threw this out there in the general population, it could lead to social media bans. And I have no problem getting banned from social media. I just want to make sure it's not on a technicality. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I want to go down. You've heard me use this analogy before. I don't want to be Al Capone dying in Alcatraz, man, of syphilis because of tax evasion, right? When you finally cuff me, I want to go down because of the body count, the amount of body bags you pulled out of the St. Valentine's Day massacre. I want to go down for that, right? I don't want to go out on a technicality. I want to earn that prosecution or persecution, as the case may be. But you know what? That was wimpy, hypocritical. You know, I've tried not to ask anything more of this audience when I've been urging us to stand up for our rights and defy these petty, gross tyrannies. You know, when my state opened, I went out right away. When my church opened, went out right away. When there were opportunities to fly outside of my state, went right away. I've tried not to ask anything of anyone else. Like I don't want to be like the teacher unions. If I understand the position of the teacher unions, their current position is that you were fine to risk your life to work all the grocery stores that they shopped at while they were off the last few months. You were fine to risk your life for all the hardware stores and Walmarts and all the other essential places that the teachers shopped at these last few months while they were off, right? You were fine to do that.
Yes.
You were fine to risk your life delivering their food. You think there was maybe any members of any teacher unions that had some Uber Eats or some Grubhub for the last 4 months at any point in time, do you think?
Probably.
So you were fine risking your life in your job for them and their convenience while they were at home for the last few months. But they then get to determine your kids' lives on the other end of this as well. Is that kind of the position of the teacher unions? All these other vocations are fine risking their lives to provide them services and products that they would like. But they're not interested in, they're not taking any risks for your kids whatsoever. That kind of seems like the position they're taking right now.
And aggressively so.
No
they're
doubt.
not being ambivalent about it.
No doubt about it, which is why I did this yesterday. Let me do this again today. If you're sitting around, Nashville just announced that it's all online in the Nashville public schools coming up this fall. There's a lot of poor kids in Nashville. All those kids that don't have a computer. What are they going to do? What do they do? See, if you're tired of putting your fate, the fate of your kids, the fate of your family into the hands of these educrats and their political causes and their whims, now is the time. Check out our friends over at Freedom Project Academy. Go to this website. freedomforschool.com is the website. That's freedomforschool.com. Freedom Project Academy is built on Judeo-Christian values. It is for students K through 12. It's a live, interactive environment with a teacher in a virtual classroom, and they specialize in critical thinking. It's not about how you think or what to think, but how you think. They want to, do that whole teach a man to fish thing, rather than just stealing a fish from somebody else and giving it to somebody else and calling that redistribution. Again, Freedom for School, though, is where you want to go. Spots are filling up fast. You can get some free information on that website at freedomforschool.com. So I don't want to be like the teacher unions. I have tried to, every step of the way, practice what I have been preaching here when it comes to defiance. Last week, I didn't do that because I'm concerned that preaching this doctrine of America's founding, which really, the doctrine of the lesser magistrate is just a nice, fancy civic term for the civil disobedience that is practiced throughout the scriptures. That's really what it is, where people just refuse to do what government says because God says that's bad. Don't do that, or dumb. That's wrong. Don't do that. And so we put this in the overtime rather than in the general population because I didn't want it getting out there, because they're looking to ban people that urge defiance of these statist schemes. And then I got to thinking, though, A, that's hypocritical, but B, wouldn't we be okay being banned for that?
Oh, yeah.
I'm totally okay with being banned. I mean, that's the cause, right? I'm totally okay. I'm fine taking the ban for that, right?
For sure.
Yeah, I don't want to go down for claiming that they're making the frogs gay, but I'll go down for that, right? So here's what we're going to do in Theology Thursday. We're going to go back to that video from last week, because it really is the ultimate application of a biblical worldview in the civic arena. What happens when government proclaims itself as God? And we all recognize there's only one God, ma'am, and he doesn't dress like that, right? What do we do? So for Theology Thursday next hour, we're going to take that overtime from last week, and we're going to play it for you here. So the entire audience on podcast, Blaze Radio, that get the free feed, you're going to hear all of that, and then we're going to break it down some more for you. And I'm going to share with you an email from one of our listeners who demonstrates on an individual level how the doctrine of the lesser magistrate goes right down to the individual autonomy of every single American. All right, we're going to do that coming up on the next hour of the show. But before we get to all of that, here is Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by A Reconsideration. All of us on this show have been adamant in our opposition to the lockdowns and shutdowns brought about by COVID-19. And while the death rate from COVID-19 continues to plummet, as Dr. Anthony Fauci reminded us yesterday, the war is not over.
It's a false narrative to take comfort in a lower rate of death. There's so many other things that are very dangerous and bad about this virus. Don't get yourself into false complacency.
Which is why on this montage, we're going to highlight some of the words of the soldiers on the front line of the war against this virus. It's a part of this equation we've simply overlooked, and perhaps if we'd done so sooner, we would have softened our tone about the shutdowns. Dr. Talia says his hospital is managing, but just barely, at keeping up with the increased number of sick patients in the last 3 weeks. The hospital's urgent care centers have also been inundated, and its outpatient clinics have no appointments available. Dr. Bernard Kamens, Associate Professor of Infectious Diseases at the University of Alabama at Birmingham, says that UAB Hospital canceled elective surgeries scheduled for Thursday and Friday of last week to make more beds available. We had to treat patients in places where we normally wouldn't, like in recovery rooms, said Kamens. The emergency room was very crowded, both with sick patients and who needed to be admitted. In California, several hospitals have set up large surge tents outside their emergency departments to accommodate and treat patients. Even then, the LA Times reported this week emergency departments had standing room only, and some patients had to be treated in hallways. In Fenton, Missouri, SSM Health St. Clair Hospital has opened up its emergency overflow wing, as well as all outpatient centers and surgical holding centers, to make more beds available to patients who need them. Nurses are being pulled in from all floors to care for them. From Laguna Beach to Long Beach, emergency rooms were struggling to cope with the overwhelming cases and have gone into quote-unquote diversion mode, during which ambulances are sent to other hospitals. Hospitals across the state are sending away ambulances, flying in nurses from out of state, and not letting children visit their loved ones for fear they'll spread. Others are canceling surgeries and erecting tents in their parking lots to triage the hordes of patients. There's a little bit of feeling of being in the trenches. We're already battling these infections to try to get them under control, California Dr. James McKinnell said. We're still not sure if this is going to continue. At Parkland Memorial Hospital in Dallas, waiting rooms turned into exam areas as a medical tent was built in order to deal with the surge of patients. A Houston doctor said the local hospital beds were at capacity. Chicago's Dr. Anthony Marinelli says they've seen a major spike in cases. It so overwhelmed the community hospital that they've gone on bypass at times. That means they'll tell ambulances to bypass the ER and find another. Dr. Atala, the chief of emergency medicine at Grady Hospital in Atlanta, says the hospital called on a mobile emergency department based nearly 250 miles away to help tackle the increasing patient demand. Quote, at 500 plus patients a day, you physically just need the space to put a patient in, Dr. Atala says. Now that I've read and you've heard some of the words of the soldiers on the front lines in the battle against this virus, perhaps you'll reconsider, as I have, that the lockdowns were and are necessary. Oh, those are from 2018. Sorry about that. Everything that I just read for you are from stories about the 2018 flu season. My bad. And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by our friends over at Patriot Mobile. If you haven't already made the switch to Patriot Mobile, their latest promotion might just be what you've been waiting for. Right now, they're giving you a choice. Either get a brand new phone or, if you want to keep your existing one, a free month of service, because Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative mobile phone company. They will never charge you hidden fees. And unlike Big Mobile, they won't send your hard-earned money to leftist causes or groups that try to destroy the country. Plans start as low as $25 a month, and their U.S.-based customer service team was just rated #1 among all wireless providers. So get nationwide 4G service and unlimited talk and texting. Switching is easy. Keep your phone number, bring your own phone, or get a brand new Motorola G7 Play. This is their biggest promotion of the year, so you don't want to wait. Call 972-PATRIOT right now. That's 972-PATRIOT, 972-PATRIOT, or go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. patriotmobile.com/Steve. When you get an opportunity to do business with people that believe the same things you do, and it doesn't cost you more money or a downgrade in service, take full advantage of it. 972-PATRIOT or patriotmobile.com/Steve. That montage from Aaron, I can't tell you, and I know I've said this a ton, and I just have to keep saying it. You have never been lied to like you have been these last few months. You just haven't. I haven't been. What is happening here? Virtually everything you're being told, in most sectors, the exact opposite is true. Coming up in the overtime today, I'm going to go take an article from Politico Europe. Is that some right-wing? Politico Europe, Breitbart. Most people don't really know the difference. Yeah, right. Okay. I'm going to take an article. It's about a month old from Politico Europe. Because one of the things we're being told, well, we can't play sports here because they were able to lock down the virus in all these countries because they did everything government told them to do. And they had really strict social distancing, and everyone and masks are mandated everywhere in all these other countries. Is that true? Oh. But based on the track record so far, probably not. It's probably not true. Probably not true. And you're going to find in the overtime today, I'm going to go through every European country what their restrictions were as of about a month ago. Because they're all playing sports and doing stuff. I mean, right? Tom Cruise can go to the UK to film the next Mission Impossible film. Last I checked, he cannot go get a drink inside a bar in Los Angeles County, correct? Didn't they lock that back down because of the spike in cases?
I thought so.
Yeah. So we're going to go through this today in the overtime. BlazeTV.com/Deace. If you're not already a subscriber, you can go there and get a discounted subscription at BlazeTV.com/Deace, or just go there to watch this later today. But virtually everything you're being told is in this country anyway, is 180 degrees different from the truth.
Lord Nefarious right now is sitting somewhere really hot, being like, come on, stay in your lane, bro. That's what's happening. It's demonic.
I want to share a note I got with you, or I got about an hour ago before we went on the air. And I've not heard from this woman in more than 20 years. She's my former mailroom supervisor at Blue Cross Blue Shield. She was one of the supervisors I had when I worked in the mailroom at Blue Cross Blue Shield. She writes, hopefully you remember me. My son just sent me your video about the second wave scam. Thank you for that true information. I have felt like I have been under mental and emotional terrorism. This reminds me of the meaningful conversations we had when we worked together. Very proud of you and all you have accomplished. I've not even thought of this person in years just because it was so long ago, right?
Right.
And she chooses to reach out for the same reason that a lot of you have reached out to us on this show for the last few months. I have gotten this kind of note, I can't even count how many times. So you know what this means? It means you're not alone. You are not alone. What you are is unrepresented. That's the issue here. This is why we are left with no choice but what we're going to talk about next hour, the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. We are left with no choice but to defy. Because the normal traditional process where your interests are supposed to be heard, your grievances are supposed to get an audience, doesn't mean you'll win the day, doesn't mean you'll win the argument, doesn't mean you'll persuade government to follow what you think is the righteous path. Doesn't mean that. You're not guaranteed an outcome here. You're guaranteed an opportunity. And you're not right now. That opportunity is denied you. There isn't a political party that represents you. You can't do what the ACLU does and just sue people anywhere in America and get standing in a federal court. The cavalry isn't coming. We're on our own. And I know I applauded the Trump White House going on the offensive yesterday with schools. And I still do. But did you see the ridiculous guidelines his own CDC put out for kids to go back in school? Why don't you just put them all in juvenile hall? Why don't you just put them in prison? They're ridiculous. They're absolutely ridiculous. And what's the guy's name who's mismanaged this the whole time? Redfield or something, right?
Correct.
Well, they're just guidelines.
Feel really bad if anybody shut down their schools because of these guidelines.
If he loses in November, mark my words. If he loses in November, he will have only himself to blame, President Trump. His failure to fire Anthony Fauci and his lackey over there at CDC, who has mismanaged and been dishonest, categorically dishonest this entire time, will be the reason why. Because he allowed them an audience in front of the country. He kept putting them in front of the country. And they're the ones that provided the rationale for the country never reopening. He'll only have himself to blame, only himself. Because I'd have fired those slap phalluses in about 3 seconds, and so would most of you. And who gives a runny turd with corns in it what some nitwit dweeb traitor to America on CNN thought about it? Or all of them, for that matter. Don't celebrate the death rate. The nation's leading infectious disease expert, allegedly, says don't celebrate the death rate. You're not alone. I could do a show every day where I just read notes like this from people. The problem is you're just not represented. You're not alone by a long shot. Now, I'm not going to drop silent majority on you because I don't believe we're a silent majority anymore. I don't. But I also, though, believe there's a hell of a lot more of us than the system prefers to admit at the same time. We just have no representation. Who comes forward to defend us? The names are very rare. That's why so many of you give so much rope to Donald Trump. And I understand it now. Took me a while to get it, but I get it now. Because for all of his faults, and they are voluminous, he's really the only person with any real power that has shown at any point in time in recent memory, he cares what you think and might actually attempt to act on it. Might not be successful, might be clumsy, might be incendiary, but he's the only one. In the end, Andrew Klavan over the Daily Wire had a headline on a column last week. I didn't get a chance to read the column, but boy, howdy, did the headline just sum it up. Donald Trump is our only hope, and that is sad. I thought there was a lot to that. That's why maybe it's good news today that his own appointed Supreme Court justice has ruled against him on his personal finances and prosecutorial harassment. Because if you know anything about Donald J. Trump, he is driven more by personal, by the personal, we shall say. He's driven more by the personal than anything else. Like I'd prefer that he defies the courts on, killing a whole bunch of unborn babies or something like that, right?
That would be nice.
That would be nice, but at this point, man, I'll take what I can get, man. I'll take what I can get. If it's something like this that prompts him to finally flip the bird at this fake constitutional convention over there at the Supreme Court building, I'm your Huckleberry. I'll line up. Sure. Because that's where we are. We are all just going to have to defy this. I mean, folks, we just watched, The Guardian has a story out yesterday. They're estimating worldwide 26 million people took part in these racial protests last month across the world. 26 million. Let's say they're not even close. Let's say they're 50% off. 13 million is still a hell of a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's say they're 90% off. It's 2.6 million people. That's still a lot of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of people. So let's go with the 90% off, 2.6 million. The mayor of LA says don't sing in your church, or was it the governor of California? Was it Newsom or was it Garcetti out there? I can't remember.
I thought it was the governor.
Was it Governor
I think it was
Newsom?
the governor.
So don't sing in your church, but protests are okay. You saw your opponents defy all of this and get everything they wanted doing so. So why do you obey it then? I'm sorry there isn't a party that represents us. I have given more than a decade of my life I'll never get back trying to not make that the case. I did this all over the country. with moderate success, a lot of it in my home state, where I think, frankly, the atmosphere that a group of us carved out 10 years ago in our state, we're still kind of coasting off the fumes of that to some extent now. I'm sorry that that's the case. But I can't change that, and neither can you. And here's what I can also tell you. Things aren't going to change unless we make it happen. The founders spent years appealing to King George. They didn't just jump immediately to Lexington and Concord. They didn't want to have the confrontation either. I know we have this we got a false choice where the founding generation is from. We have like lionized these guys like they're superheroes. You know, you hate cancel culture today. Do you know that the Sons of Liberty actually tried to cancel a person they thought was a British Tory? They tried to get rid of him, cancel his business. They tried to cancel culture. And Alexander Hamilton stepped in and said, we're not doing that. And then they found out later the guy was actually a spy for George Washington. They didn't even know that. They didn't even know. So, I mean, listen, I'm a big fan of the Sons of Liberty, but they're not infallible. They tried to do cancel culture in the 18th century. So on one hand, we've turned them all into a bunch of virulent racists that are irredeemable now that they're all dead. That's not true either. A reference to slavery was originally put into the Declaration of Independence. They fought so bitterly over the issue, they couldn't get it passed with it. They couldn't get a constitution passed by addressing it. That's how bitterly divided over it they were. So we have that false choice, but then we have this other false choice that these guys just all tiptoed between the raindrops, made no mistakes, and they're just beatified. That's not true either. The truth is its own reward. That's fine on its own. The truth is okay. And the truth is they put off confrontation, defiance. They put it off for a long time. They didn't want to make a stand either. One could argue now, looking at history, maybe they put it off for so long that the only stand they left themselves was violent revolution. You don't have to wait that long. You have institutions in place. They're not representing you now. They're not serving you now, but they're in place. They could be made to serve. They could be made to represent you, but you're going to have to make them. They're not going to do this on their own. There's no blog you can write. There's, as much as I love what Tucker Carlson is doing, there is nothing he can say in one of his monologues on the highest rated show in the history of cable news that's going to make the guy running the CDC say, you know what, man, I know I've been a total hacktastic scam artist for the last 4 months, but I read Tucker Carlson's monologue last night, and I've just decided I'm going to finally give you all the data that I've just been sitting on for the last 4 months so we can shut down until President Biden is sworn in. That's not how this works, man. We're not a nation of laws. We never have been. We're a nation of political will. We always will be. Politics is not a game of access. It is a game of leverage. Leverage. And if you're wondering, who really are your overlords? Who is it that really rules over you? Simply find out whom you're not allowed to offend. Ask the couple facing hate crimes legislation for cleaning up graffiti in the street yesterday. Now, you're going to have to do this. We're going to have to do this on our own. We're going to have to massively defy on our own. And some of us will face consequences. Some of us will get fired. Some of us will get arrested, but they can't arrest us all. They can't fire us all. That's how our rights were taken from us in this era. And I don't foresee any other way we're getting them back. Hey, have you noticed your hair isn't looking as full as it used to? Yeah, I know. Losing your hair is no fun. So let's talk about options. You can go to your doctor for a hair loss treatment prescription, then visit the pharmacy, then try not to go broke to avoid going bald. Or you can try Keeps from the comfort of your own home. You'll get the same doctor-recommended FDA-approved hair loss treatment, but Keeps offers the generic version, so it's about half the cost. And one more thing you'll love about Keeps is that it's all online. You just answer a few questions, snap a few pics of your hair, and a licensed doctor will review your info and recommend the right hair loss treatment for you, and then it's shipped discreetly to your door. So why make unnecessary trips to the doctor or the drugstore when you can do it all from home, not to mention save a ton of cash too. So if you want to get started with a special deal, here you go. Go to keeps.com/grow, KEEPS. Just like it sounds, keeps.com/grow. Get 50% off your first order. So you're already getting the lower generic versions or lower priced versions, the generic versions anyway. So how about another 50% off your first order as well to get you started? Keeps.com/grow. That's keeps.com/grow. Did you guys see the clip going around? I really could care less what gets said on any given night. You guys know this. You almost never see me respond to whatever was on the Cuomo or all these cable news shows. I just don't get into any of that. I could care less. Like most of America, I'm not watching them, right?
Correct.
But this one,
Don Lemon?
Yeah, this one though I thought was interesting. Okay, it caught my eye because Don Lemon last night on CNN made a reference to when Jesus was on earth. He just, he made all. I want to make sure I don't misquote him, but he alluded to making several mistakes or something from what I recall.
He wasn't perfect.
He wasn't perfect when he was here, right? Okay. So that is a good segue to our guest here today, because he has probably done as much research on the state of American belief systems, or in the case of Don Lemon, the lack thereof, as just about anybody has for the last few decades. His name is Dr. George Barna now, and he joins us from the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University. And George, it's a pleasure to have you back here with us on BlazeTV radio and podcast. How are you?
Doing well, Steve. Good to be back with you again.
You probably were not shocked to hear what Don Lemon said about, Christ did not lead a perfect, sinless life when he was here on earth, because you have been charting America's worldview devolution now for the last couple of decades. Right before we went into lockdown, you came out with your most recent report on the worldview trends in America heading into 2020 and this election. This might be your most depressing yet. Give us the details.
Thanks for that lead-in.
You bet.
When I go to speak publicly, they say, "Hide the razor blades. Barna's here." That when you talk about what Mr. Lemon said, for instance, we find that almost half of all Americans hold that same perspective. Right now, 44% would say that Jesus sinned. So, when we put together a lot of different fundamental truths about what the Bible teaches about life, how life works, and so forth, what we find is that only 6% of Americans right now have what could be described as a biblical worldview, which simply means that when they make their decisions from moment to moment, they're trying to make sure that it's consistent with the teachings of the Bible. Historically in America, that was, I and many others would say, what put America on the right track, what allowed America to become a great country, because we had biblical morality, biblical values, biblical lifestyles. Not perfection by any means, but nevertheless, we at least knew that there was a difference between right and wrong. Now, in what's becoming a predominantly Marxist culture, at least based on worldview, what we know is that people are saying there is no God, there is no right or wrong, there is no source of truth. The only thing that matters is that you feel good about yourself, that you pursue happiness, and that you're able to experience that.
Let me put a positive spin on that very dire information that you just provided us, if I could, though. Okay? So 6%, you said it's 6% of Americans. And from being very familiar with your work over the years, when you talk about a biblical worldview, we're not talking about verbal plenary inerrancy here and progressive sanctification and Pelagianism and we're not getting into the Luther Erasmus debates here, right? We're talking like Sunday School 101. Jesus died. Jesus, loves me. This I know, for the Bible tells me so. Rose again on the third day. There is a devil, right? We're talking real basic stuff here.
Very much.
Okay. So if it's only 6% of Americans have this worldview, that is a paltry percentage. But if you do the math on it, That's almost 20 million people, George. That's almost 20 million. To put that in perspective, the total population of people, in America with a biblical worldview by your research, if they were their own state, they would rank tied with Florida for the third largest state in the country, behind only California and Texas. So even with those paltry numbers, that can still be mobilized into a pretty potent force of influence within a culture, couldn't it?
Absolutely true. And in fact, if you want evidence of that, all you have to do is read the Bible. Because when you look at the cultures that God, throughout the course of human history, as recorded in the Bible, transformed, typically what he did was he took what the Bible calls a remnant of people who were completely sold out to him, people who got it, people who were committed to his way of seeing life and doing life. And in fact, often he had a larger group of people that he could have called upon to change things. He set a large share of them aside, and he took a small portion of that already small population and did what needed to be done. So it's really not so much about numbers here. In fact, when you study movements and revolutions in recent human history, what you find is, depending on the situation, depending on the movement, the country, all these things, anywhere between 3% to 12% of a population can radically change what the rest of the population does. So it's not so much about numbers, it's about commitment, and it's about willingness to act rather than willingness to simply complain.
Well, that has been a theme of our show a lot these last few months, because I mean, I know we're probably, I don't want to outkick your coverage, right? You're providing the data, and then people like me then ultimately determine, what we do with it, how we analyze it, what we say to our audiences and platforms should be done in light of it. But, I have been fascinated and frustrated, to hear from the people in our audience. Hey, I've got this dictatorial governor in Illinois. I can't leave my house. And I'm like, you guys are the ones that own the guns, right? You can't leave your house. Hey, my playground is closed down. I can't take my kids to the playground. I'm like, I don't know. The gun owners are the ones so the gun owners are the ones that are locked down. But the people that want to take the guns away can just go ahead and riot in the streets and totally defy all of this. See, George, I tell my audience, I just told them again this a few minutes ago before you came on, we are not a nation of laws, and we never have been. We are a nation of political will, and we always will be. You can pass all the laws you want. It's a matter of who has the will to go out and enforce that or not. The Supreme Court can issue any opinion on anything it wants. The question is who has the will to go out and enforce that with the force of law or not. And I think what believers are struggling with is this idea of they are attaching complacency and compliance and conflating it, I think, with holiness and righteousness. And they're not, I think, the same thing whatsoever. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with you totally. And when I look at this election that's coming up, one of the things that I think people misunderstand is they think it's an election about parties, it's an election about personalities. It isn't. It's an election about worldview. But you have to understand, regarding worldview, that worldview is not just what you believe, because the reality is you do what you believe. And so behavior is really the proof of your worldview. So if we're going to have people out there who, believe the right things, it doesn't make any difference unless you then convert that into action and therefore do the right things. So that's really what all this is about. Are we willing to put our faith on the line? Are we willing to put everything on the line to say that I believe these things so much, and I believe that freedom is so important, that I'm willing to do something about it? Voting is great. We've got to do that. But as we're seeing right now out in the marketplace, we've got to be doing a lot more than just voting.
The church in previous eras in this country was the institution that taught the hierarchy of values, that taught the chain of command, what it meant to obey God and not man. I can't tell you how many people I've had come to me in the last couple of years with that have had their pastor basically tell them that Romans 13 means you do everything the government tells you to do, except it can't possibly mean that. Otherwise, why did Nero cut Paul's head off? If Paul meant the full context of that was to do anything the government tells you to do, then why didn't Paul comply with everything Nero said? And how did he become an enemy of the state? Why was he in house arrest? Why was he in chains? It doesn't make any sense if that's the actual hermeneutical application of this. But what we are seeing is that a lot of church culture in America is from what I can tell, is fairly homogenistic, George. It's really about producing shiny, happy people. It's really about producing compliant people that don't rock the boat, and people whose number one goal seems to be nicer than God. Please tell me, based on your research, that I am wrong.
I'll not only not tell you that you're wrong, I'll tell you how you haven't gone far enough in describing the issue with the church. Really, what's going on in America today is that we have a profound spiritual deficiency. And that spiritual deficiency is what has produced our worldview crisis. And it's that worldview crisis that's responsible for America's demise. Now, the solution to that, naturally, would be that churches would teach parents to teach their kids, so that as a person's worldview, which is almost fully formed by the age of 13, is being developed, parents are the primary ones who are responsible for that. But what's happened is, instead, churches have decided that the measure of success is different than what Jesus taught. And I only know this from our research, where we talk with pastors across the country, asked them if they thought their church was a successful ministry. More than 80% of them say yes. We said, okay, so how do you know that? What's your indication that you're successful? And we found that most churches measure 5 things: how many people show up, how many programs there are, how many staff people they've hired, how much money they raise, and how much square footage they've built out. Those are nice measures. I'm a measurement guy. I'm glad they measure something. But you got to measure the right thing. And the problem here is that Jesus didn't die to put butts in seats in auditoriums. The reality is that he died so that people's lives would be transformed. He said we're to make disciples, people who love, people who obey the will of God, people who bear fruit in the society based on that will. That's what he taught in the book of John. And so when we look at the church today, we find that, number one, we don't have leaders leading the church, which is why when you look at America today, a nation that is abundantly confused about what to do, looking for strong, meaningful, acceptable leadership, the church is nowhere to be found. Church leaders are not there. Why? Because most of the people that graduate from seminary, again, their words to us in our surveys, is that they do not believe that God has called and gifted them to lead. They believe that he's called and gifted them to teach. But what does a teacher want? The biggest possible audience. How do you get a big audience? By not being controversial in a church. And so they're afraid, or at least that's their perception. And so they do not teach the things that people are crying out for. We literally did a study where we asked people, would you like your pastor to teach you what the Bible says about the current issues of the day? We enumerated 13 specific issues. And in each case, we had an overwhelming majority of church people said, I'm dying for my pastor to teach me how to think biblically about these issues. But when we talk to the pastors, they steadfastly refuse to preach about them. So this is a big part of the problem.
I know, because one of the number one pieces of feedback I've gotten over the years on this show has been, how come I don't hear what you talk about in church? I can't tell you how many pastors have had come up to me over the years and say, your show has caused me to have to change the way I preach on Sundays. I don't take any pride in that. That's sad. I mean, I've got a lot of rough edges. I am not someone in a traditional context that ought to be considered any form of a leader in the church. I need to be under the submission of a person far more mature and pious than I am. But we're in a time of the judges, and so God is calling forth people like Samson, because the nice guys, the guys that know better, they just sit on their hands, and someone's got to do the work. So it's kind of left, to the cretins further down the food chain, like myself, to kind of fill the void, and that doesn't happen a lot in pulpits. I've gotten that feedback from my audience, George. I cannot tell you how many times over the years. And ultimately, it shows the root of how we ultimately got here. George Barna, great work, Director of Research over at the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University. Been following your work closely for years, George. I'm an admirer. Thank you very much for joining us today here on The Blaze.
My pleasure. Thanks so much.
You bet. Gentlemen, your thoughts on that conversation?
We've been relying on experts for far too long. In what you said about waiting for a pastor to do their job, well, a lot of us, kind of put it on cruise control and just think, who are we to step in? That's very much how we've been in public education, either though we're supposed to be the primary educators of our children. We keep conceding this. Please remember, the prophetic world is bookended by Amos on one end, one of the earliest prophets, and John the Baptist on the other. These were not experts. Amos was a goat herder. John the Baptist, locusts and milk and honey. That's you. Be them. Take your country back and demand more of your leadership. Otherwise, throw them out.
Yeah, and I mean, along these lines, is it the chicken or the egg? Do people, and this is the Cheez-Its versus steak conversation in another context that we had with our friend Daniel Horowitz a few years ago. Chicken or egg, is it because we have bad leadership within the church, or at least not sufficient leadership within the church, that we have people who are unwilling? It seems like more people unwilling to actually confront the hard issues. Or is it because we don't have very many people willing to confront the hard issues that we have a lack of leadership within the church? It doesn't really matter. More leadership, actually leading as defined in this conversation is what we need regardless.
We'll come back. Theology Thursday is next. Back with Hour 2, live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd and Aaron McIntyre. All of you at 888-900-3393. That's 888-900-3393. Steve at stevedeace.com is how you can email the program. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. YouTube.com/Steve Deace is where you can get clips of this show. You can sample yourself and then share with others. You can follow us on Parler as well. What's Parler? We'll find out soon, because if you're a conservative on Twitter, you won't be much longer, and you'll be on Parler. At Parler, at Steve Deace on Parler. Finally, if you are a podcast listener to the program, thank you. If you haven't done so yet, please smash that subscribe button to help boost our numbers. You can also, if you like the program, give us a 5-star review. If you haven't done that, please do so. If you have, maybe do it 7 or 8 more times. I don't know if those will count, but let's find out. Thank you to the thousands of you that have left us those 5-star reviews, or the 10 of you that just kept leaving them over and over and over again, whichever. I'm not sure if it's that thousands of people have left us those 5-star reviews, or it's just 10 people stuff in the ballot box. Other than that, either way, we'll take all of the positive reinforcement that we could possibly get. Theology Thursday brought to you by Rough Greens VitaSmart. You know why we're taking so many supplements as humans nowadays? Because the vitamins, minerals, nutrients, the things that we need in our food is often stripped out so it can be mass produced and then mass consumed cheaply. And we think we're saving money with all this cheap food we buy. And then, of course, we got to go buy these expensive supplements later on. And so it's 6 in one, half dozen of the other. Same thing goes with our pets' food as well. Chances are, especially if your pet's eating that the dry dog food that they love so much, it's missing a lot of those things, even the omega oils that your dog needs. That's where Rough Greens VitaSmart comes in. It is not a dog food. It is a premium dog food supplement. You just take it. It's a powder, and you just take it and pour it on your dog's food. And apparently it makes the food your dog loves even better. I don't know. I've not sampled this one myself, but our dog Cap absolutely loves this stuff. All right. So if you want to try the 14-day Jumpstart bag today for just $14.95, here's how you can do so. Go to roughgreens.com/blaze. RUFF, by the way, is how it's spelled. I don't know what will happen if you type in Rough Greens the traditional spelling way. I would urge you not to find out. okay? Roughgreens.com, especially when you're at work. RUFF is how it is spelled. Roughgreens.com/blaze. All right, let's get to Theology Thursday. And we're going heavy. Perfect segue to the conversation we just had with George Barna, where he was going off about application. Hey, you can claim to believe all you want. What are you doing with it, right? Okay? I mean, where do you take that belief system? Where do you take it with you? Or do you take it with you at all? And then what do you do with it when you arrive, wherever you're going? So we're going heavy on application this week. And we're going to discuss, I think this is the only thing standing between you and national divorce. It is an important doctrine. It comes from our founders in a civic sense, but it really comes from the biblical notion of civil disobedience. When is the right time to tell government, no, I won't comply? It's called the Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate. And it is a lost art in America that we need to recover, because it's probably all that is standing between us and national divorce. The Doctrine of the Lesser Magistrate requires disobedience against government. That's what it is. It's disobedience. It's a refusal to obey everything government tells you must do.
Tell me more.
And that's and here's and let me jump to the conclusion, and I'll work my way back from there. This is the final tool, civil tool, an instrument at our disposal to avoid a national divorce. I get asked a lot, and I wanted to let that just simmer for a second before I follow it up. This is the last remedy before a national divorce. And I get asked constantly, give me some practical steps. There aren't any practical steps. There are none. I don't know what those practical steps. Spend another 30 years trying to take over the Republican Party. I don't think that has much practical chance of working. And frankly, I don't think the Republican Party has 30 more years. So there's that. There really aren't any practical steps. There were many of them. They've just all been taken away from us, which leaves only the impractical left. Now, your founders anticipated that could occur. They themselves were men who were out of practical steps and were left with the most impractical one of them all, declaring a revolution against the most powerful sovereign in the world at that time, King George III of the British Empire, which the sun never set upon. The odds of their success as a bunch of ragtag colonials going up against the most imposing armada on this planet in the 18th century were remote. And then the odds they could pull this, if they were even successful, the odds they could then pull this thing together into a governing country. How are we going to get these Catholics in Maryland and these Quakers in Pennsylvania and these Baptists in Georgia and these Episcopalians in Virginia who have laws on the books that if you don't belong to their state church, you can't vote or serve in government? How are we going to forge these people if we even pull this thing off? How are we going to then forge these people into an e pluribus unum from there? How's that going to work? The odds of that even get lower.
And because they knew how hard it was, it's why they didn't even try. I mean,
Yes.
we had the Articles of Confederation.
Yes.
It took, 13, 14 years before they said,
yes,
we got to give it a go.
Yeah. There's a reason why the great BYU scholar Cleon Skousen calls it the 5,000-year miracle or the 5,000-year leap. The odds of threading this needle, man, only Providence could have made this happen. Only Providence could have done it. Human effort alone would not have. Our founders understood that there may come impractical times. They actually were not opposed to bureaucracy. They set up all kinds of it, all kinds of checks and balances. They wanted the system to grind to a halt at times and to move slowly because they didn't trust human nature. We've gone from not only trusting human nature, but putting our faith in it. That's the progressive way. You can be like God. You can be. You can evolve to a state of utopia and perfection. You can. You're not even basically good anymore. You're basically great. All right. Even Pelagius would be like, y'all took this too far.
Yes,
right?
you would.
Even Pelagius, like, dude, I still believe there's a hell, guys. Okay. Yes, Pelagius right now would be the Jonah Hill gift. Guys, I'm in hell right now. Trust me, I can verify this is real. You don't want to take this argument. You've taken my argument too far, guys. Way too far here. Okay. I was a humanist. I wasn't a communist, guys. Enough with this. Okay. But I digress. The doctrine of the lesser magistrate is how the founders intended for us to be able to say no to these things without having to do so in the way that they ultimately had to say no to King George. Violence. They didn't want that. They armed the citizenry not to encourage violence, but to incentivize it not to happen. So the government would know, hey, there's a price to pay for rolling up on the people. They can shoot back. Are you sure you're willing to pay that? That's an example of a bureaucratic check and balance. But the people were the check and balance on tyranny because they could shoot back if they had to. So here's how the doctrine of the lesser magistrate works. Let me give you an example from this week. The Supreme Court tries to tell the state of Louisiana that it cannot demand that the doctors who are going to get involved in the most intimate aspects of women's anatomy in order to help them kill their children are held to the same code as the actual doctors are. The doctrine of the lesser magistrate is where the governor of Louisiana says, I appreciate your perspective, but I know that you control no army, no police force, and cannot enforce this edict. It's a blog. So, hey, we were interested in what your opinion was, and now that we know what it is, it's bunk. It goes against what the Constitution clearly said. I mean, the 14th Amendment says equal protection under the law. You're saying that the women who go to abortion clinics are not entitled to the same standards of conduct of the doctors who see them as if they went to any other walk-in clinic or a hospital. We're not treating people like that. Not to mention the Fifth Amendment says no person shall be denied life, liberty, or property without due process of law, and that being in her belly is a person. So we're not even going to let him kill the kid anyway. So the answer is no, but thanks. Answer is no. We're going to enforce the laws of Louisiana instead. Because no government has a right to do that which God says is wrong, and God says not to murder, and we're not doing that here. But thank you. Now, the governor of Louisiana in our federalist system is below the Supreme Court, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this case, he is the lesser magistrate, and he has decided we're not doing that. Another example would be, your governor has decided that he's shutting your state down on bad data and science. Have we seen any examples of that recently?
Yes.
Yes. Now, can the governor enforce that on his own?
No.
Is Jay Inslee in Washington going to go to every county in Washington to make sure that all the restaurants and bars and everything are all shut down?
Governor, Karen up in Michigan sure tried.
She tried, yes. But not even she could pull that off.
No, she could not.
Which means they need what? Who to do it? Well, they need law enforcement, right? Your local sheriff says, we're not enforcing that. And we actually saw several examples of this during the lockdowns. That's the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. Your sheriff says, we're not doing that. I'm not enforcing that law.
And they got applause for it.
Yes. Steve, that sounds like lawlessness. No, it's not lawlessness, because sheriffs and governors, how do they get those jobs? And well, every governor and most sheriffs, how do they get those jobs? They're what's the word I'm looking for? They're starts with an E. What's the word? They're elected, which means someone had to consent for them to hold those positions, correct? That whole government by the consent of the governed thing, right out of the Declaration of Independence, which means, and how do they garner that consent? They need a majority of what? Voters. So if you're a voter, if you're a citizen of one of those counties, and you're like, hey, I really want to be I want to be the ant under the boot of my governor. And I hate the fact that my sheriff is treating me as a free citizen. You are welcome to run against said sheriff, or go get another person to run against that sheriff and have that person run on a platform of, here in this county, we're the boot, or we're the ant to the governor's boot in this county. That's how we roll here. That's the law. You're welcome to run on that. And if he loses, he leaves office, and your guy wins, and you get the subservience that you asked for. No, the lawlessness comes from when your elected governor violates their oath of office, when an unelected judge believes they are their own sitting inquisition on the Constitution, or even they're the Constitutional Convention themselves. That's the lawlessness. What is the law? The doctrine of the lesser magistrate, a jury. Some of the founders referred to the jury as the fourth branch of government, because a jury was supposed to be a lesser magistrate. Your case.
Yes.
You went to a jury, correct?
Yes.
The police, who are the law enforcement, right?
Yes.
Said that you violated these laws, arrested you, and charged you with them, right?
Yes.
You went to the lesser magistrate,
yes.
Right? Are the police superior in not in terms of political power, because the people are the ultimate authority, but in the legal realm, are the police superior to the general population?
Yes.
Yes, they are. So the superior entity said you were guilty of these things and should be punished accordingly, right?
Right.
You went to the jury made up of whom?
My peers.
My peers, but they're who are all lesser magistrates in the legal community, right?
Right.
And you made your appeal to them. And what did they do?
They said
they overrode the police and went with you.
Yes.
That is another example of the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. And then it ultimately goes all the way down to you as a citizen. That I am an individual made in God's image. My rights come from God. If you tell me that you get to violate my God-given rights, my answer is no, you don't. You don't get to do that.
This is the crucial point, if I may, because most conservatives and Christians are objectivists, and I'll let Steve flesh that out. He's done it before in the past in terms of their sense of innate legal theory. I mean, they are the people, if the speed limit says 75, they're going 75 in the left lane, and they won't move over, and it's your problem if you don't. And so I'm not going to break the law. The law says it. If you wouldn't be treated as such if you didn't go out of your way to bring trouble upon yourselves. That's how most of them think. And that's not how somebody can think if they think about the law as Steve has laid out, or MLK in Letter to a Birmingham Jail.
That's right. And ultimately, we're governed by the laws of nature, and nature's God. That's what we're governed by. That's the highest law. That is the ultimate law. And whenever man makes a law that violates that law, you and I not only have the right, but frankly, the duty and obligation.
Correct.
To disobey that. Over Jesus' head at the cross, the Romans hung a sign. Do you guys remember what it said?
Yeah, Jesus Christ, King of the Jews.
King of the Jews. Now, why did they say that? What did that mean? The Romans don't care about a messianic line. They're not making a theological statement. They're making a political one. When the religious authorities who were against Jesus took him to Pilate, the charge they were charging him with, we would call it today sedition. They were claiming that he was riling up the Jewish people to overthrow the Roman government by claiming that he was the rightful king of the Jews. And that, as they said there in the Gospel of Matthew, we have no king but Caesar. The Romans understood what that meant. The Romans did not execute Jesus because they viewed themselves as the enforcement authority of Jewish theological disputes. They hated the Jews, and they didn't give a rip. Ultimately, they viewed him as a seditionist.
And there they are. Hey, I'm just driving the speed limit here.
Yes. That, in fact, one of the questions Pilate asks Jesus, what's one of the questions he asks him?
KS Veritas.
Yeah, he only asks him a few questions. One of them is, what is truth? That one. The other one, that question he asks him, are you the king of the Jews? Because in the end, that's all Pilate cares about. The politics of this situation. Are you claiming, sir, that you're a higher authority than Caesar? That's what it meant to a Roman mind. Which tells us what? From the very beginning, Christianity, and frankly, Judeo-Christianity, this has been the issue. This has been an issue going back to the dawn of Revelation. The Judeo-Christian ethic is a threat to the world system because it calls us to be higher and better than this world is. The laws of this world want to bring you down to its level. The laws of nature and nature's God want to raise you up to his. Herein lies the conflict. Why won't you be as debased as everyone else? Why won't you join into what everyone else does? In his goodbye speech, Joshua, who is the greatest general the Jewish people ever had, in his goodbye speech, he gives them a challenge. If Baal is God, go and worship him. If God is God, worship him. As for me and my house, we will worship the Lord. What he is saying to them is another variation of this theme. Which law will you live under? The laws of this world or the laws of the only one true God revealed through Moses? And when this world says you have to live this way, will you still live the Mosaic law, or will you do like we have done as a people over and over again? Go right back to our old ways. There's nothing new under the sun. That's the same challenge today. The doctrine of the lesser magistrate was put in place by our founders so that all the way down to us as individuals, we could say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I don't care what I don't care what you heathens are doing out there. We're not doing that here. When people like Michael Ferris and others were pioneers in the homeschooling movement, they were practicing the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. They were saying, hey, all the way down to us as individual parents, we are not surrendering our children to this school system's ideas. We're not doing that. We're not complying with that. This is the last remedy left. This is why I'm encouraging so many bar owners and restaurant owners to defy these edicts. Because they're not enforceable. They couldn't even enforce them on one salon owner in Dallas, let alone all of them. If they couldn't enforce them on one salon owner in Dallas, how are they going to enforce them on all of them? They can't. Unless you consent to it. You're not shut down by Doug Ducey and Greg Abbott and Ron DeSantis. If you want to know who shuts you down, look in the mirror. You shut you down because you have to consent to this. And there's one thing we saw with Greg Abbott when the woman defied him in Dallas. Notice how he ex post factoed his own executive order. His attorney general leapt to her defense to have her released, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you think these Republican governors want to be seen on TV shutting down private enterprise? Hell no. Hell no. They're not going to do that. But they don't have to worry about it if you just comply with everything. Why would you sit at home? Do you believe that the men who founded this country, for all of their various faults, do you think they would have sat there and watched a group of people in Illinois, thousands of them gathered to provoke perversity and shake their fist at God, and then said, and that's why I need to stay home because of this pandemic. I'll stay on my farm. Hell no, they wouldn't have done that. So why are you doing it? Why wasn't every church in Illinois open the day after? Why wasn't every pastor in Illinois that saw that video like, I'm full Nehemiah mode, we're opening up tomorrow? Every church. See, that's why you're losing your country, folks. You're not outflanked by leftists.
You're outflanked by Mike Pence.
Yeah, you're infested with wimps and a lack of courage and a lack of resolve. There's all kinds. That's why there's no practical steps left. You've surrendered all of them already. This is the last step left, is the impractical one. I'm going to practice civil disobedience against this.
Yeah. I did this and this and this in your name. Okay, well, now be a man.
Yeah. Not so much.
Really?
And this is it. On this level, if you're not willing to say no, let me tell you what happens next. Hear that knock? It's on your door next. What are you teaching them kids in there? Tell us about the church you go to. What books do you read?
And if you still don't believe at this moment that it's going to come to that, you deserve it.
Yeah. So we weren't willing to use any of the conventional methods. Instead, our conventional method was just vote Republican and have them screw us over and over and over again. And which meant now your rights literally lived and died based on who won an election. So much, I guess that word inalienable doesn't mean what we thought it meant. No. Okay? I guess it doesn't. Well, now it doesn't matter because the Republican Party doesn't care about you, man. Saw that on Tucker Carlson last night. They're even putting their senators on Tucker's show to laugh at you now. They don't care.
He actually made the seat at the table defense. That's what he did.
Yeah. So now it's really just down to us as individuals. The doctrine of the lesser magistrate. We have to show these people that there is a price to pay for trying to impose on us, and we are willing to pay it. And then challenge them, are you willing to pay it, sir? Yes, Greg Abbott, I'm willing to go. I'm willing to go to jail to save my family business. Are you willing to lose an election when the country sees you put people like me in jail? Are you willing to do that? That's the last one left. That's the last tool in the toolbox left. If we won't use that one the way it was intended, then at that point, man, it's national divorce and every man for himself. Some thoughts on that video from last week from our overtime that we decided to share here for Theology Thursday on the doctrine of the lesser magistrate. What do you think? Aaron, I'll start with you. What do you think?
Just got done watching all 5. I don't know how I talked my wife into watching the last 2 Pirates of the Caribbean movies. Those were not great, but the first 3 are really entertaining. And there's one point I think even in the first movie where I think Johnny Depp's character, Captain Jack Sparrow, tries to invoke the pirate code. And some of the pirates say, hang the code. Hang the code. Guys, we're not pirates. I'm not likening us to a bunch of seafaring scoundrels. But we've been playing by the pirate code for far too long here. I don't want to say that. I can't risk my job. I don't want to say that. I don't know what Aunt Matilda is going to say on Facebook. I don't want to stick my neck out and speak up and confront my local elected representatives. You're playing by the pirate code. It's time to hang the code there. By the way, Captain Barbosa says, these aren't rules. They're more like guidelines, actually. Anyway, I love that line. We've been playing by some sort of ethereal set of rules of engagement that our opposition, the enemy, at least the people who see you as their enemy, those are the rules that they made up. Why would you ever play by their rules? So yes, at the end of the day, and I say this knowing full well, I'm really blessed in my life, really fortunate. And don't send me your theological emails about luck and okay, don't send me those. You know what I mean. I'm very, 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 very privileged to be able to do what I need to do and get to do what I get to do. So I say this knowing that someday it's probably not going to be the case that I'm sitting right here in front of this camera talking to you, and that the rubber is going to meet the road in a way that maybe it's not right now, or at least to the degree that it is. But guys, it's just a job. It's all of the earthly things. They're just earthly things. I mean, Jesus promised that he'd give us everything that we need. Everything that we need to live. What are we afraid of? And it's that fear. This has everything to do with the doctrine of the lesser magistrates. The only reason why each of us, or any of us, you invoke the pastors in Illinois the day after the Pride Parade in Chicago drew a crowd of thousands of people. Why didn't they open up their churches the day after that? Fear. Fear. That's all that it is. And so the conversation about fear has everything to do with the doctrine of the lesser magistrates. Because if we're not even willing or able to stand up to our sheriff, to stand up to our state senator or state representative or our county supervisor, J.B. Pritzker, Gavin Newsom, Governor Karen, they laugh at you. They spit on the ground in front of you. They're never.
And then go out and march in the protest the next day.
They're never going to listen to you until you force the people closest to you that are supposed to represent you to listen to you.
So how does this work its way all the way down to the individual level? I got an email from a listener with a suggestion that illustrates the point we're trying to make. I'm going to share that with you. We'll discuss it here when we come back. If you are struggling with chronic pain, whether it's back, knees, neck, shoulder pain, the underlying cause could be inflammation. And if you want to defeat inflammation, you need to do it before it causes permanent damage. So check out Omega XL, backed by 35 years of clinical research. It attacks inflammation that's causing your pain. In fact, I use it to attack the inflammation in my own body as well. Pain relievers, tropical rubs can temporarily help, but often just to mask the problem. Omega XL, though, neutralizes the inflammation that is causing those pains, the stiff joints, aching muscles, etc. And if you want to get to a real solution, right, so that you're not just putting that stuff that smells like that on the sore parts in your body all of the time, check out Omega XL. To get you started right now, Omega XL will throw a second bottle at you for free when you buy your first one at omegaxl.com/Steve. So it's basically buy one, get one free. omegaxl.com/Steve. This is what I use in my workout recovery regimen. omegaxl.com/Steve, or call 800-844-4888. That's 800-844-4888. Did you guys just see that Neil Gorsuch is the deciding vote in basically giving Tulsa, Oklahoma back to the Native Americans?
I saw that earlier, and I was in earlier, like way before the show, and I was in can't even mode. I'm gonna look into it.
I've had those days where I just can't compute the news because it will just put me over an edge. I've been there.
You should probably clarify for that's a Babylon Bee headline.
No.
Yes.
Both and?
Oh, it is. Okay, it may be.
No, that's what I'm choosing. This is my truth.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. Okay.
To be affirmed.
Right now, the Babylon Bee is pissed. Right now, they're like, dude, that was scheduled to post on Facebook today at 1:00. And it actually happened.
Appropriation.
No, folks, I'm not making this up, folks. This is, and it's not April 1st. No. I mean, Neil Gorsuch is on, as the great prophet Clint Black once sang, a good run of bad luck right about now. I mean, he's 0 for 3 today. He sided. I mean, he sided against the president on his finances and subpoenas, and on something else earlier today. And now Neil Gorsuch is the 5th and deciding vote in essentially saying about half of Oklahoma is an Indian reservation, including the part that includes Tulsa. So, if you are listening or watching us today from Tulsa, Oklahoma, surprise! right? I think at this point, the only justifiable response from this is another tweet from Mike Pence later today, that this is why we need to vote Republican for good judges, right? Right?
I'm down with that. Yeah.
Like I said, I was in can't even mode.
Can I? You know what? Then I'm gonna really yank your chain with this. Joe Biden just came out 10 minutes ago and said that if elected president, he will do everything he can in his administration to rescind the Supreme Court opinion yesterday that the Little Sisters of the Poor, I think this is the 7th time they've had to make this lawsuit, or it's been numerous, okay, that they don't have to pay for your abortions and for you to get your freak on, right? And he says he's going to rescind that if he's president. I think that can only result in him now winning a majority of the Catholic vote.
Yeah. Oh, I think you can take that to the bank probably.
I mean, given the trend line we're on, right? Clearly, he must now win a majority of the Catholic vote.
I listened to Dr. Barna. I heard it.
All right, let's get to part 2 of Theology Thursday, brought to you by realestateagentsitrust.com. If you want to get into the real estate market, it's a trying exercise to sell a home, and especially if you're buying and selling one at the same time, in any market, but especially one that's as uncertain as ours is right now. So you want to make sure when you go all in with an agent who is all in for you, one that you can trust. So how can you tell, right? Ever gone on an agent's website and had him or her just tell you flat out, really, I'm going to lose interest. If I can't sell your home in about 30 days or so, I'm probably going to lose interest. Probably my marketing plan is, let's just have another open house that I likely won't even attend this weekend. Right? They don't put that stuff on their websites, do they? Typically not. Get that kind of honesty. That's why you want to make sure you go to a website that has vetted the agents before they're listed. And that's what they do over at realestateagentsitrust.com. The name kind of says it all. Just go visit the website, realestateagentsitrust.com. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. So I got a note from one of our listeners, Robin Dodds, who sent me this note a couple of days ago. She says, here is, and I'm assuming it's a her, I don't know. My bad, I'm assuming gender. They said that their solution to the scam of the lockdowns is to hit government where it hurts, speak their language. If every working tax-paying citizen put their state and federal taxes in an escrow account instead of their government's pocket, that would wake them up, and they would quickly be reminded that they are nothing without us. Now, because I don't know if it's a he or she, and I don't want to assume gender here in the enlightened, gilded age in which we live, they're correct. Well, hold on. Are they, though? I'm trying to think. Gentlemen, can you think of any historical precedent whatsoever? Can you think of any time period where a group of people collectively thought that the taxation they were being levied was extremely immoral, especially given the lack of representation they had within the government that was levying said taxes at the same time, so they refused en masse to pay them? Has that ever been tried before? Do you know?
You're talking about the original Brexit, I think, and we know that's racist.
Yes. Aaron, were you taught any of this even at homeschool? Or did they ever...
What is the H word? History.
Yeah. In fact, I kind of just think I coined a phrase like "no taxation without representation."
I like it.
That would that's got that,
T-shirts, bumper stickers.
Yeah, that's got a good ringing dance tweet. You can tweet that one out. It's kind of pithy, right? But alas, Robin, we can't. No one's ever done what you're talking about. We can't think of any kind of example of this, so we're screwed and just pay everything and do everything government says, folks. Well, Robin's email is essentially, we should just do what the people who gave us the country did. See, the doctrine of the lesser magistrate goes all the way down to us on an individual level. Individually, I am not complying with that. I'm not doing it. I don't care what it would cost, but I'm not doing it. Because the cost of doing it to my beliefs, my integrity, my eternal soul, answer is no. I'm not doing it. we've now got, well, we've had judges redrawing election maps for quite some time and redrawing the American map because you can't defend the southern border. So essentially, if you live south of Kansas City, you're Mexico. I mean, we've now they're just, redrawing the intrastate map. So if you're in Tulsa, Oklahoma today, I hope you enjoyed your Wi-Fi while you had it. Wampum coming your way next, right? Churches no more. Sweat lodges are the new thing, right? I mean, do you know why they do this stuff? Who's going to go out there and enforce Neil Gorsuch's opinion that half of Oklahoma is an Indian reservation? Is Neil Gorsuch going down there? Like, is there the Gorsuch Brigade that will go down there and enforce the Native American land border within the state of Oklahoma? Does such an entity exist?
No.
No. So who will be doing the enforcement? Well, I go back to what we talked about on Pop Culture Tuesday with The Dark Knight Rises. And Bane's lead henchman goes out there on the bridge. You brought this up, Todd.
Yeah.
And it ties perfectly into this conversation. Bane's leading henchman goes out there on the bridge and says, hey, anybody tries to escape and leaves the city, these bridges are the only way in and out. Anybody tries to escape and leave the city, we're detonating a nuclear bomb. And the military guy says, 12 million people live in Gotham City. You can't possibly enforce that. You can't stop 12 million people from leaving. I mean, you're just a ragtag bunch of insurgents, terrorists. You can't do that against 12 million people. Where are you going to get the manpower to enforce such a command? And then Bane's henchman smiles and shrugs his shoulder and says, you're right, we can't, but you can. You're going to do it. Because if you don't, we're going to detonate a nuclear bomb and kill all 12 million of these people. So you're going to do it for us. That is exactly how our system works. They know they can't enforce that half of Oklahoma is now an Indian reservation. But they know that you're going to comply with it, so they don't have to. They know that. You'll just comply with it. You'll enforce it for them. I don't even know who the Republican governor of Oklahoma is right now. But I can promise you I could probably comprise what his reaction is going to be. This is a terrible and death edict. But alas, the courts have spoken and we must comply. So, rain dance. I don't know what to tell you, They know you're going to do it. They know you're going to do it. That's why. I don't feel, I've had several of you come to me the last couple of months, especially given where our show's been on the front lines of pushing back against this, and you must be under all kinds of pressure. And not really. I'm not really feeling like I'm under any pressure outside of what I normally feel, to do the best show I can do, to feed my family, to feed their families, frankly. Okay. I mean, that's the pressure though that I signed up for, right? That comes with the job. I don't feel like any additional pressure. You know why? Because if anybody at the Blaze ever called me and said, we don't care that you have the data, we don't want you saying that anymore, I would just say it anyway. I don't feel any pressure because nobody's going to make me do what I don't think is right.
I think people say that and they confuse pressure for frustration.
Right.
Because I'm frustrated. I
am indelibly, systemically frustrated.
I'm in Chris Tucker rush hour mode. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Because no matter what we say, no matter what we write, and not just we on this show, there's been many sellouts, but there's been many who have heroically been trying for a long time now to get you to wake up. When are you going to do it? What are you prepared to do? And that is my biggest frustration, thinking on a daily basis how to say the same thing in a new way that finally gets you to fight. That's frustrating.
Yeah. Man, and on top of my frustration, my normal ways of self-medication, I can't watch any sports.
Oh, yeah.
There hasn't been a new movie released in this country in 4 months, right? Trust me, dude. I mean, I am in a perpetual state of frustration, okay? But I don't feel like any pressure at all. I know I'm right, and it's not because I'm smarter. I've just actually done the homework, and I'm not lying. So I know I'm right. So I don't feel any pressure, and I'm not doing, and everybody kind of knows that about me, which is why I don't get pressured to do things a lot that people don't think I'm going to do, or I wouldn't even think about doing up front. Because I think most people that know me for more than 10 minutes know I have no problem with the word no. No, my answer is no. I'll tell my mom no. No. There's little. Now, there is one person on earth who has the ability to get me to do things I don't want to do at times. But she's not here right now. All right. For the other 331 million people on this earth, no. It's not personal, but no, I'm not doing that.
And actually, you had a way more pressure on you 10 years ago when you were announcing the slippery slope.
Yeah.
But you had to look ahead and say, it's coming and it's here now.
Yeah.
But then there's real pressure to convince people. I mean, the truth is evident now. We are at the bottom. We're 100 miles per hour at the bottom of that slope now.
The truth of the matter, too, just to follow up on what you just said, Todd, my career has skyrocketed the last few months. By every metric, we measure my show, platform, presence, brand, because of the pushback I have given on this scamdemic. I am incentivized for the scamdemic to continue. I would be better off if it would continue. I would give it up tomorrow if it meant the truth would come out and I at least could have a Saturday. I know for a fact that I can set the culture war aside for a Saturday and a few hours in the fall and watch a damn college football game and just be a guy named Steve. I'm incentivized everywhere else on a professional level. I'm incentivized for the scamdemic to continue because it's benefiting me personally tremendously to confront it and call it out. I don't care. I want it to end yesterday, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, 5 minutes from now, next week. Because it's the biggest fake news we've ever been sold. I mean, I saw some data put out today by a guy who's a PhD data analyst at Northwestern, one of the top 20 universities or so in America, who pointed out that in the last 3 months, hospitalizations to death ratio in America has dropped from 7%, meaning 7% of the people that were admitted into a hospital for COVID died. It's 1% now. Why aren't we celebrating that? Why isn't that the lead story on every single newscast? No, I don't want to milk this thing for all of it's worth because it's evil. This is wicked. What's being done here is somewhere between a psychosis and demonic. I want to defeat this, but I don't see a way we can defeat it without confronting it. John 3:17.